People ask me, what was it like to start your own business when you were so young? And my response is, it was easy because I had nothing to lose.
Imagine if email systems didn't talk to each other. That means if I wanted to send you an email queue, I'd have to log into your corporate email server,
Right.
type it out, and then log off and then turn around and type it into mine so I had a copy of it. I said, I don't think I want to be in the software development business. And I'd heard all kinds of nightmares about that. But I thought, I'm never going to be able to sleep at night unless I've got it out of my system.
This was keeping you up, like literally keeping you up at night.
Exactly.
At this point, did you start this new company?
No. I fully thought at the end of the prototype, I was going to prove to myself that we could not do this.
And you have no experience in software development.
Exactly.
You're putting your money down
Right.
on something that could completely fall apart.
I was naive, but I remember at the end of the prototype process, I was like, this thing is so good. This prototype is awesome. Let's just start selling it.
Hi, welcome to The Build Up, a podcast by Procon Consulting. I'm your host, Q Jung. Hey, Ty, welcome to The Build Up.
Thank you, Q. Thanks for having me. It's great to be
Well,
here.
I know your history, right? I have gotten to know you. We've been working on a lot of different projects.
Yep.
We've had our startup through GSA and all the different projects, and we've encountered you for so many years. So I thought that maybe we can start by just going through your background. How did you get into construction? Let's start from the very beginning. How did you get into construction? How did you land in entrepreneurship? How did you land in technology? And then we'll end with your latest venture and the things that you're working on.
Yeah, sure. Thanks. Well, we're going to go way back here. So I think I really originally got interested in construction in junior high school. When I went to junior high school, they had just opened up a brand new junior high school, and it had a state-of-the-art shop class. And they had woodworking and plastics and metallurgy, and I found myself any spare moment I had with outside of my classes, spending my time in shop, building things, and I just really enjoyed that. So consequently, I got to be really good friends with the shop teacher. And as a teacher, he didn't teach during the summer, of course. So he was a shop teacher. So what would he do during the summer? He would build homes. As somebody that was spending a lot of time with him, he said, "Hey, you want to join me this summer? We have a small team of people. We build some residential homes, custom homes for the summer." So I got a really good taste of all of that at a very young age, 12, 13 years old. And then that kind of started my interest in construction. Now, in a parallel way, I come from a family of engineers. My dad was an entrepreneur, had his own electrical engineering company. He did small batch manufacturing of integrated circuits. So I would work for him typically in the summers. And so I kind of saw what it took a little bit to be an entrepreneur. That was kind of ingrained in me, kind of be your own boss.
So it was in your DNA from the very get-go.
Yeah, it really was. And when it was time to kind of get through high school and go off to college, I really thought I wanted to be an architect. And I really had a passion for construction. I thought I'm going to be an architect. My dad really sat me down and he said, what you really want to be is an engineer. As a Pennsylvania kid, I wanted to go to Penn State.
There you go.
And I found out that Penn State has this program called Architectural Engineering. So I thought, well, that's perfect. Check all the boxes with that. So I went to Penn State. It was funny when I started off with some of my kind of freshman and sophomore classes. We had, structural engineering, design, and things like that. It's a 5-year degree because it's really a hybrid between civil engineering and architecture. I started to kind of use out-of-the-box thinking to solve some of the problems. And I remember we had to build things like a cantilever, see how much weight it could hold, or things like that. And where my friends were using all of their engineering formulas and everything to design these things,
outside the box.
I would basically say, well, geez, I found this fiber-reinforced tape. I'm going to take my balsa wood cantilever and just tape the heck out of it with this fiberglass tape.
All the skills you'll need to
to
run a business.
Yeah, exactly. So, and what would happen is I would win these competitions, and all of my friends would think, "Oh man, you just must be this super smart engineer with all the formulas." I was like, "No, kind of thought out of the box. It's like
Right.
when I was a senior, one of the things you have to do as a senior, you have to do a thesis. Most of the construction management thesis topics were on kind of better process and everything for building construction. But I did mine completely on using technology to improve outcomes of construction projects. And back in those days, we're talking 85 here.
Right. But it was nonetheless technology that largely influenced you while you were still in construction. And I love that concept that, is in the construction industry, but you can be a technologist, you can be a business person, and you can be an engineer, you can be a constructor, you can do all different things all within our industry. It's so big and so vast.
The construction industry, and whether that's residential or commercial or heavy highway, or it's just so exciting because it's one of the few industries that you can participate in a project and really
see
physically see
tangible
what you've built.
And it's an exciting industry, and it doesn't necessarily mean that you pick up a hammer and nails. I mean, you're in technology in the construction industry, which we're going to talk about. But I mean, there's so many exciting lanes to be in within construction, and it's such a big industry. And
one of the things I say to our new hires, when you bring somebody in that maybe isn't necessarily from the industry, maybe they're a technologist or something like that, I always say, if you think about business, there's really two things that they have, all businesses have in common. One is finance, and the other one is infrastructure.
Right.
I remember meeting with corporations like Target, and if you're in the boardroom at Target Corporation, they're not talking about how many sweaters they want to sell the next year. They're talking about how many stores do they want to open. Same thing with McDonald's. I would basically say the differentiator of a McDonald's or a Starbucks or something like that is their real estate. It's the fact that there's one on every corner. So it's all about infrastructure and real estate. And I think that a lot of people don't recognize that. So
anyways, we can continue on with your story about you got into technology and what next?
My senior year, we all had to do a thesis. And again, a lot of my friends and the other students were really kind of focusing on a particular project, how to improve process around that. I chose to focus on technology. And there's a competition. There's about 90 AE students at Penn State. And there's a competition for the best thesis. And I certainly wasn't the smartest person in the class or anything like that. But again, I kind of thought outside the box. And I did my whole thesis on using technology to improve outcomes. And it just so happened that the panel that would judge the thesis and ultimately choose the award were industry professionals, Turner and Tishman and Gilbane and a lot of the big players, because a lot of them had gone to Penn State to recruit.
Right.
And I won the entire award for first place finish for the thesis. And as much as I would have loved to think that was really, about the content of my thesis, I realized later it was really more about the topic of my thesis. And it showed me how interested large corporations were on kind of embracing this kind of new tool called technology and the different ways that they could do that. And again, this is 85, so you can imagine this is really kind of pre-internet. So then from there, I kind of realized that was very exciting. And the rest of my career, I had always kind of found myself having a passion and having kind of trying to carve out a niche with technology related to construction management.
So where did you land right out of college?
So out of school, I went to work for Omni Construction. So one of the two companies that ultimately became Clark Construction. Omni Construction at the time was at the forefront of embracing management information systems, and that factored into my decision to join them. One of the things that I did while I was at Clark, as I did a lot of work on the project management steering committee, and our deliverable of that committee was to define all of the best practices that we used at Clark Construction. And the deliverable is really a thick 3-ring binder of all of the process procedure. So when a new engineer was hired, you hand them that book and say, that's how we do stuff here. But at the end of that cycle, we found that we now needed management information systems to kind of provide structure around the enforcement of those best practices.
Right.
So back in those days, we actually had our own in-house developers on AS400 mainframes. But I would work with them to kind of, take the information that we had developed and put that into MIS systems. And that's when I really decided I love doing this. So ultimately, I decided to make a career kind of change. And I thought, well, the thing I love most is technology applied to construction management and general contracting. So I decided to start a business around that.
Yeah, when I met you, that's what you were doing.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
Implementing management information systems, which is really, maybe you can talk a little bit about that and what that is.
Yeah. So I'm a construction operations guy, and I thought, well, I'm going to make this career switch of selling technology. I decided to go to work for a firm up in Baltimore. Mm-hmm. They were just getting into kind of construction management technology. And really it's project management for construction projects. And I immediately, as I joined them, again, not a salesperson, not really somebody that was familiar with that type of business. But when I would go out and I would sit down with business owners or project managers and contract managers, I was immediately successful. And I really kind of attribute my success from the fact that I understood their pain. And I knew the tools that I was selling were going to help them solve that pain. Right. So I felt like I became very trusted with that. So then ultimately I put together a business plan. I laid it in front of the principals of that organization and said, I really think we have a big opportunity here. And they didn't, it wasn't necessarily a good fit. So I made it known to the vendor that I was probably going to depart.
On your own.
They had asked me that would I consider starting my own business and doing it as a channel partner. And I wasn't really thinking that way at the time. But I basically said, why wouldn't I necessarily do that? This is the dream. So I did that, and I quickly became one of their top partners.
So what was the name of the company, the one that you first started?
Yeah.
And then kind of take us through that.
Yeah, sure. My original company was a company called ProjectTeams Solutions Incorporated, okay? Very similar to the current company. Mm-hmm. I was very fortunate. So again, we got the URL projectteam.com.
Early on.
Wow,
during,
right?
like early on during their World Wide Web.com
right.
era.
ProjectTeam.com. So started that company. We were, again, a reseller. We were selling somebody else's product. We were focused on services. That was Project Team Solutions. And then what happened in about the 2006 timeframe, I was fortunate to win a deal with the United States Postal Service, and a massive deal, okay?
Is that the one in LaFont Plaza?
Well, this was going to be for their national rollout of their EPM system for all postal facilities.
EPM, define what EPM is.
Yeah, EPM is electronic project management, kind of a term used by the U.S. Postal Service, later used by GSA. Mm-hmm. A lot of the government, they either call it a PMIS system, project management information system.
Those are web-based project management solutions for the construction industry.
Right. And then, that kind of led to a bunch of larger accounts. Now all of a sudden, I looked at this the other day. We actually had implemented, and again, one of the things we'll talk about in a bit, we still have one of the entities that was part of that original company. But since 2002, we have actually implemented construction management systems for over 1,500 organizations.
Oh my goodness.
I mean, it's a massive number. And a lot of them were the world's largest companies, like the Turners and the Tishmans and Gilbane type companies, but some of them were very small organizations. So we were the only platinum level partner in the world for that organization. That meant that we were getting high margins on their. So we were actually making more on selling their software than they were making. I think our margins were like 55% margins, plus all the services and the hosting revenues that we had. So that business was highly successful. It got to the point, though, now we're talking, 2012 timeframe, 2010. We started to see kind of a lack of attention to research and development.
They weren't keeping up with the industry.
Right. And the product we were selling at the time was the market-leading project management system in the world. And I remember we certainly had our complaints about that. I mean, we're out there talking to clients every day, implementing systems, but we're starting to hear common themes as to what these clients were looking for. And it got to the point that a lot of our clients said, we really love what you guys do for us, but the technology you're providing is starting to kind of get a little bit antiquated. So then what happened was that firm was acquired by a much larger firm. And I thought, okay, this is great. They're going to reinvigorate their research and development spend.
Right.
But for another 5 years-ish, they still had not done that.
But
Now
your brand is associated with this company. And
yeah, and I thought, geez, we got this great business, but my cart is attached to that horse. And I don't know if that's going to be the long-term solution here. Right. So I thought, well, geez, what would it take to develop our own product?
Yeah, this is when you and I, over beer, you were sharing some ideas that you had some convictions.
Yeah.
So talk a little bit about that.
I said, I don't think I want to be in the software development business. That's a road to probably not go down. And I'd heard all kinds of nightmares about that and the complexities and, it's never as easy as you think kind of thing. But I thought, I'm never going to be able to sleep at night unless I've at least got it out of my system, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I thought, well, let me put some money toward this. I'll put together a small prototype team, and let's see if we can develop a prototype. And I knew we could do the things that most construction project management systems were doing, RFIs, change orders, and things like that. But I had dealt with enough firms, and we had a lot of firms, Architect of the Capitol, United States Postal Service, firms like that they said, we're looking for solutions that we can connect. We want our vendors to be able to use the system for their own needs, but be able to connect to us at a central level. And I took that very seriously. So part of our prototype team, I challenged them with, okay, can we develop a system that everybody can independently use, everybody on a project? So let me talk to that for a second. Obviously, on a construction project, you might have 60 different companies to come together. They build a one-of-a-kind thing, and then at the end of it, everybody goes their own separate ways, right? And kind of the problem that I would describe was, imagine if email systems didn't talk to each other, right? That means if I wanted to send you an email queue, I'd have to log into your corporate email server,
Right.
type it out, and then log off, and then turn around and type it into mine, so I had a copy of it, right? As silly as that sounds, that's kind of the nature. That's the state
project management system
project
is
management
very
systems.
project centric. We had this conversation.
Yeah.
It's very project centric.
Exactly, and really kind of unfair. I mean, there might be one party that controls the central system for the project, and all 59 other companies are at their mercy, right? So what that leads to are a bunch of fundamental problems. Number one, in the industry today, everybody's duplicating everything that they do. I got to put stuff in your system. I got to put stuff in my system. And that's very inefficient, very overhead intensive.
Mm-hmm.
The challenge that I gave to the prototype team was, can we develop a system that everybody can use independently? Everybody can mold to the way they need to do business. Like, for instance, I always say, a general contractor has a certain way that they need to use the system. Their mechanical subcontractor has to use it. They've got to be able to use it to collaborate with their ductwork supplier,
Right.
all the way downstream. Yet connect and share information for the project. And then the second thing that comes right behind that, though, is if you're going to get 60 different companies, if you will, on a project to all be able to use the system's going to have to be highly adaptable to their needs, right?
Right.
I always hate to use the term customizable because I think that has a bad connotation with software sometimes. That typically means you're going to have to hire developers to customize it. But I wanted to make our system easily customizable, so any end user could easily customize the system to fit their own specific needs. So I wanted to know, can we develop a system that, think of LinkedIn for projects, if you will. I can send you an invitation. If we connect, we can exchange and collaborate on issues, but you don't own my environment, I don't own your environment. I challenged the prototype team with that, and at the end of about a year, they proved to me that we could do that.
So talk a little bit about this prototype team.
Yeah.
At this point, did you start this new company?
No. I fully thought at the end of the kind of test period, the prototype, I was going to prove to myself that we should not do this, could not do this. But that was fine. That was a acceptable outcome. But then I wouldn't think about it anymore. I wouldn't
This
be
was
bothered
keeping
by
you
it.
up, like literally keeping you up
Exactly.
late at night. You've been pretty successful all the way up to this point. Life is good, but you just want you're putting your money like
Right.
down on something that could completely fall apart, and you have no experience in development, software
Exactly.
development.
Exactly.
What was
Right.
that like?
I was naive. So when I hired the prototype team, I thought, okay, let's knock this prototype. I remember at the end of the prototype process,
I
I
was
was
going
like,
to take.
this thing is so good. This prototype is awesome. Let's just start selling it. And my developer people are like, Ty, this thing will not scale, right? I mean, you got a couple thousand users in it, it's going to fall apart. So what happened then at the end of that process, I thought, wow, now I'm really excited because I'm like,
I
this
think
is
I
a
can do
problem
it.
that we're really kind of solving here. But what I did at that point is like, I thought, okay, now I have a decision to make. There was two concerns that I had. Is like if we go down the path, by the time it's ready for prime time, is there somebody else that's going to have come up with the idea
Right.
and beat me to it? So obviously we were still supporting the product that we were making our revenue from.
Right.
So I thought, well, what am I going to do here? So I concluded that I'm going to spin off a new company, a product company. I'm going to kind of continue, have the other company continue to support the product that we were and providing services around that, but also re-steer them toward the government sector. So I convinced my wife to leave her very successful career and head up the existing company, ProjectTeams Solutions Incorporated. When we spun off the new company, that became Project Team Incorporated. The URL, projectteam.com, and then Solution Guidance became the service-oriented company.
Knowing a little bit about the software industry and the amount of venture capital, private equity investments that are flying around everywhere, have you ever thought of that?
Yeah. So first of all, we had the luxury because our family business that I had built in 2002, and it wasn't until 2015 that we formalized the product company. That was very successful, and that afforded me kind of a long runway to kind of stay in stealth mode. I knew some of the things that we were doing were very cutting edge. I didn't want our competitors to see what we were doing, so we stayed in stealth mode for probably longer than most startups would. I mean, most startups would be forced to go get venture capital and get their product on the market as quickly as possible. So that allowed us to kind of be very disciplined, to kind of stay true to our roadmap. Now, today with the product, we have lots of venture capitalists are pursuing us. There'll come a time for that as we start to really kind of accelerate our scale. We've been able to scale considerably with our own resources, which has allowed me to kind of stay primary owner of the organization.
And I remember early on when you and I were talking, you had talked about like you wanted full control over the direction of where this thing
absolutely.
went.
I wanted kind of strategic partners. You and I talked about this at one point. It's like I wanted organizations that, number one, understood what we were doing. Number two, we're going to be able to provide more than just capital. They're going to be able to provide relationships and kind of evangelize, if you will, the business model. That's what was very important to me and still is. I mean, if we bring in venture capital at some point, I want to have members of the proven companies that are in this space to be able to provide capital to address that kind of scale. So
would you say you're trying to sell your system to owners to use to control all the assets that they're hiring contractors to build?
Yeah, that's a good question there. And so people always say, well, who are you targeted toward?
Yeah.
Our target is the pyramid of users. I mean, it's owners, general contractors, design firms, subcontractors, suppliers, etc. It just so happens, and I would not. This is one of these things that I would not have predicted. When I, most of my background is for large general contractor.
Right.
That really is my sweet spot. And when we originally came out, that's kind of where we targeted the general contractor space. Coincidentally, or for whatever reason, a lot of owners started embracing our system. Because I think primarily because it's easy to use, the cost model is pretty low, all of those types of things. So that has now caused us to pick up, I mean, obviously the owner specifies a product. Everybody downstream is going to be using that product as well. So we're in the hands of a lot of users across the entire spectrum. But now what's happening is, I think a lot of times when we do a demo to a new organization, they're considering project management system. A lot of the things that come up in the demo are based on prior experience that they might have had with some other project management system. We'll tout some of our unique innovations, and they're not as concerned about it in the demo. But by golly, if they actually subscribe to our system, some of the innovations that we put forth are their number one things that they like about our system. We had a customer advisory panel meeting a couple of months ago, and almost unanimously on the panel, we were cited for ease of use and the ability to connect.
That's your key selling point, though. It's all about, decentralizing it and allowing all the other users to use it.
Right.
And your pricing structure is sort of modeled that way as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a benefit of our system. So when we go into an organization, we don't say how large is your construction program or how much revenue do you do. We say how many internal users do you have, and that's often a small fraction of their whole ecosystem. And we charge for their internal users.
Right.
All of those external contributors, which might be 80% of their ecosystem, we don't charge them for that. What they do is they'll put our product into the hands of those contributors, and then it's incumbent upon us to have provided them a good enough experience that they say, hey, why aren't we using this system on our other projects, right? So there's a viralness to the system. But there's a lot of really interesting things that can be done with a connected system, and let me mention a couple of them. One of the things that I found when I worked for Clark Construction was we had 1,000 or 1,500 project managers across the country, all building these wonderful projects, and I found that as a new engineer out of college, what do I know about deep foundations or particular issues with curtain wall or whatever it may be? There was always somebody in the organization that was an expert in whatever topic I needed. It was really just a matter of me finding that person, maybe buying them lunch and going in the conference room and picking their brain. So my experience there led me to understand there's an enormous amount of knowledge in these big organizations, and it's a matter of matching knowledge to problems, right? And as any organization is trying to do, you're trying to push down your cost, right? So if I could hire 10 new graduate engineers, and I didn't have to hire people that had 40 years experience, right, that would be better for me from a cost structure. Now, where those 40-year experience people benefit was if I have somebody that has 40 years of construction experience, if I can match their knowledge to an army of new engineers, now they're worth their weight in gold to me, right?
So they're not doing some of the lower level tasks, that you somehow create a more efficient way of delivering a product,
right,
by making the more experienced individuals to tackle bigger and larger problems.
Exactly.
And the more junior people to handle some of the junior level. So it's appropriately matching it up.
Yeah, and I think that kind of goes toward risk mitigation. Probably the employees that you're most worried about on a construction project are those new engineers,
right,
because they don't have the experience.
Right.
And they could get you into a kind of a mess. But if you can kind of match that knowledge to that inexperience, and technologies like ours allow you to do that. And I think with the new advent of AI and everything, we're going to start to really kind of leverage that. So the other things that I think are important, and I think this is where we're kind of at this inflection point in the industry. Number one, I think security is going to be a massive driver. If you are a construction company, a major construction company, and you're working with the federal government and you're putting data into your corporate system, you are at substantial risk. One day the Justice Department might come knocking, and by golly, if you're not complying with federal regulations, you are in some serious hurt. I always say that what happens on a lot of projects, the security boundary is around the project management silo of whoever the owner is, if you will. but the security boundary really needs to be around the entirety of the platform, okay? Because there's 60 different silos working on a project. It can't just be one silo is secure and the other 59 are not. So that's really what we're bringing to the table. And it's very exciting because, as I mentioned before, in 2014 timeframe, my biggest worry was when we get there, when we have our product ready for prime time, and it's been out on the market now for several years, is there going to be somebody else that have kind of beat us to the punch? And pleasantly surprised that there's not.
Project management systems has been around since the computer days.
Yep.
And this is the next progression. You
Right.
are putting it on the cloud. You're allowing multiple users to really come together. I mean, that is construction in a nutshell. You have disparate groups of people coming together for this short period of time, collaborating and working on the mission, which is to construct a building.
Yep.
And then they walk away.
Right.
And during that entire process, you're trying to problem solve some of the security issues. You're trying to decentralize some of the way old antiquated project management systems was very geared towards, you do your work and then like people are duplicating that work internally. So you're like, well, we need to make it more central. Why are we doing all this duplication of efforts?
Yeah.
Any other thoughts to the things that you have a passion and vision for what the future is going to be and what you're trying to help solve?
Well, I think there's a lot of issues that can be solved with platforms like ours. Again, kind of unlocking that knowledge across your organization and beyond, making procurement more efficient, being able to kind of match resources, be that subcontractors to general contractors, from general contractors to owners. But this connected paradigm, this connected platform, I really think is the future. And it's, we've seen it, these networks that we've seen in with social media companies and things like that, the magnitude of that.
Technology has a way of improving efficiencies and doing more with less.
I agree. And I think one of the things we try to do internally with our services is similar to what could be done on a construction project. As you're hiring somebody new, as you just described, you're counting on that person to do so many different things.
Right.
And maybe they're good at 80% of them, but are maybe not that good at the 20%. One of the things that technologies like ours lets you do is build an assembly line. And what I say is, if you brought in a new person, maybe you want to have that person focus on reviewing shop drawings for a while or answering RFIs.
Right.
As they do that for some time period,
ramping up.
then you can kind of move them up. Now all of a sudden they're working on change orders and things like that. So, but if you don't have a system that has collected all of the information in one nice, neat spot with process and procedure around it, you're really going to be counting on somebody to kind of walk in the door with all of that knowledge and keep your fingers crossed that person's not going to get you in trouble. But it gives you much better visibility as to what your team is doing with a project management system like we have.
Just talking about the industry, you talked a little bit about the inflection point. I know, speaking from my own experience, the industry has been so resistant to embracing technology. And I know you're a big technology evangelist. Where do you think the construction industry is at right now? Like, are we at that point where we had talked earlier, where it's our turn? It's gone through so many evolutions. We've tried to implement a lot of things, but now it seems like with digital twin, I had an earlier guest. We talked about this graveyard of data that exists during the design and construction, and it sits in this place, and
it's
so
not to the benefit of the facilities people at the end of the project.
So
which
at
is
the end of the
crazy.
day, like, it is all about the people that are owning the assets and you're delivering. And I think that some of that is coming out in our conversation. What do you think we are right now?
Yeah, I really do think we're at an inflection point. And I think, number one, there's a reason that I think construction hasn't embraced technology wholeheartedly in the past. And that was, just the evolution of technology. I mean, by nature, you're building a brand new thing, sometimes in the middle of the field, in the middle of nowhere, and you can't get on the internet, or your bandwidth is limited. You maybe don't have mobile solutions. And then, of course, all of a sudden, those problems are solved, and then you have other issues like security. Like, okay, now you've got a bunch of data. Let's say you've got the capital plans on your local phone. Maybe that's not that. Maybe now there's a security issue, right?
Right.
Those types of things. So I think the evolution of technology, first of all, it's accelerating at a never before seen pace, of course. And now there's the kind of the platform technologies enable what we're doing today. Like, I mean, 10 years ago, who's Amazon Web Services?
Right.
Now they're solving all kinds of issues for infrastructure and security and things like that. So all of a sudden now we have tools that can really make an impact, and I think that's kind of where we are. And I think the next 10 years is going to be ultra exciting. I do think there's kind of this. There's going to be more attention paid to cost. And cost of technologies, kind of bringing down the cost of buildings, transitions in terms of, it seems like, residential. We're going to be converting a lot of office buildings more toward residential units, things like that. So, but yeah, I think we're at a wonderful place, a very exciting place. The industry is huge. The other thing that I think is happening is we're starting to really kind of wake up to the fact that a lot of the infrastructure we have in the United States and around the world is just very old, antiquated, needs to be replaced. We need to do that very efficiently. You guys have been very smart to kind of recognize technology and how the important role that it plays in and how you've built your business.
And I think highlighting a company like yours where you want to be part of the solution. You've had the vision from the very beginning to start this project team.
Yeah.
Maybe you didn't even know back then that this is what you wanted. Any thoughts on lessons learned? Would you do anything differently?
That's a good question. Number one, I think I would have had if I could do it again, I'd have a better appreciation for all of the aspects of developing a product. It's not just software development. There's infrastructure involved. There's, a whole list of things. So going into with kind of both eyes wide open, do your research, really understand your industry, and really have proven to yourself in one way or another that your ideas, if you want to de-risk kind of starting a company, kind of experiment with things, maybe when you're working with somebody else or something like that. So, but all in all, I think, most of the things that I had envisioned, it's very exciting for me today because they're starting to come to fruition. I mean, you're running around as a brand new entrepreneur, kind of digging in the dirt, planting a lot of seeds everywhere, having no idea that those things are going to actually grow someday. But so it's very satisfying to see some of those things come into fruition here. But entrepreneurship is hard. Nobody should say it's not, but it's extremely rewarding. And if you have a unique idea, kind of a passion for something. I mean, I can't tell you the number of times that I really don't feel like I have a job. I mean, Sunday nights I'm excited because tomorrow's Monday and I get to go to work, So I think that's an important way to live life.
What are you most proud of?
Number one, I think, it's funny. I was watching the AFC Championship game last week.
Those are good games.
And that week we had a tour of our project at the Lincoln Memorial. I was watching the AFC Championship on Sunday, and it was in M&T Bank Stadium. Maryland Stadium Authority is one of our clients. Drove down to D.C. to go to the couple projects down there. District of Columbia government is one of our clients. So I think what I'm most proud of is, we started with a blank screen, and a number of years later, our system is being used on some very important projects across the country. And that's very, very, gratifying, and I'm extremely proud of that. And we're just getting started.
Any advice that you would give to anyone that's gotten you to where you are today?
Yeah, I mean, I've always taken the approach that, I don't know what all the issues are going to be. I always had a lot of confidence. When we hired people, I thought, you know what, I'm going to hire really smart people. we're certainly going to be able to exist not knowing the challenges that we're going to be faced with. But I always had confidence that if you hire smart people and a challenge comes up, you're gonna have a pretty good approach to solving that particular issue. And I'd always had confidence that we could do that. You definitely have to have a passion. There was many times that I was faced with a particular challenge when it was really just me or just a couple of us, and I thought I should be more intimidated by this. What's wrong with me that I'm not? And I think that's always kind of powered me through. And I think from experience, you and I'm sure you feel the same way, that after you've solved some pretty significant challenges through your career, there's going to be new ones that come up, but you're also confident that you're going to be able to come up with a good solution or a great solution.
Well, Ty, I always love having a conversation with you. I do want to give you the opportunity to at least put in a plug-in with I know your company, I know you and what you stand for. And so any lasting words and what you're working on, anything you're excited about, you have the floor.
Yeah, great. No, I appreciate it. So yeah, if for anybody out there, just, please check us out, ProjectTeam.com. We've got a lot of videos, got a lot of supporting information as to what we talked about here today. Our other company is Solution Guidance Corporation. Solution Guidance is a more service-oriented company. And then Project Team is our product company.
You just landed the National Park Service contract, which is a big deal, which we're planning to use as part of our Lincoln Memorial project, which is how we're sort of connected on that project as well.
And a bunch of others. I just saw a LinkedIn post this morning. You guys are looking for somebody in your Hawaii, new National Park Service Hawaii project, so you'll be using Project Team on that as well. We're looking forward to our continued relationship with your team, and you guys have always been excellent and always been very impressed with what you guys have done as well.
We have similar stories. We got started with passion for technology. So
right, absolutely.
Yeah, really appreciate you being on this show.
Absolutely.
And thank you
for
so
having
much.
me.
You can tell that our build-up is still a startup. The build-up logo should be like over here.
Make it huge.
But this is all part of it. This is all part of it.
It's this agile way, tweaking little things.
Yeah,
get them
you know,
better.
you're a startup. You know what it takes. Like you can't get everything, and you learn, right?
Absolutely, right.